Peace, peace, family. This video right here is about the true story and allegorical meanings as well as sacred science behind the story of Adam and Eve and as well as the Garden of Eden. Now, as I always say, family, religion was created by secret society or secret fraternal Europeans, such as Freemasons, Illuminati, etc., who carry out an extraterrestrial agenda. So we're going to be breaking down the science of the serpent coming into the garden as well as everything. So y'all have to start studying the sacred science of Satanism, Luciferianism, the occult, just covert agendas, period, family. Y'all got to understand that religious books such as the Bible are Masonic books used to record the manifestation of the European race as well as other races on this planet Earth and their interaction with African people while they've been here for the last 6,000 years. This is why no religious book goes back 6,000 years. And this is why, even Europeans are only 6,000 years old. Because they started their history in regards to their own birth date, which is just 6,000 years. Now, let's get it in. Okay, Adam and Eve. We're going to do the Garden of Eden last. Adam and Eve, family, has two meanings. An allegorical meaning and a scientific meaning. We're going to use the scientific meaning first. First, we're going to go to the allegorical meaning. Now, the story of Adam and Eve, in regards to Eve being tricked by the serpent and biting the snake, right? Now, Adam and Eve is supposed to be the two first people on the planet Earth. Now, skipping all that, we're just going to deal with the story in regards to its symbolical meaning. We're not dealing with it literally. Now, we know that a goddamn snake cannot talk, and it can't come into no garden and tell you to bite an apple. The snake coming into the apple was symbolic to the usurpation of African people by an extraterrestrial presence known as a reptilian entity. Now, this has already been confirmed in regards to their existence by the United States government. So if you don't understand this at the time, please go do your research and get caught up on what the fuck is really going on planet Earth. So that being said, when we're dealing with Eve, Eve is symbolic to mitochondria DNA, which I'll be breaking down in the second portion of this when I start on the scientific. Now remember, Adam is atom, which is a subparticle that you can't see. And atoms become molecules, molecules become cells, cells become organs, organs become organ systems become organisms. Okay? So atoms become DNA. The mitochondrial Eve gene is the specific DNA sequence to African people. Now they tell you everybody on the planet Earth comes from African people. That's not true. Okay? Only African people have the mitochondrial Eve gene. All non-Africans are not human. They are 93% human being and 7% Neanderthal minimum. Some of them are more Neanderthal than others. Europeans, for example, or Caucasians, for example, share 98% of their DNA with chimpanzees. This is a scientific fact. So they have a mitochondrial DNA, or they are mitochondrial. I mean, they are descendants from mitochondrial DNAs from monkeys, primates, Neanderthals, whatever you want to call it, and animal-based organisms, not Africans. So Eve is actually the African woman who, if you study the history of this planet Earth, about 6,000 years ago, when this planet was, let's say, invaded by what you would consider a reptilian, we were, what you would call our DNA alphabet. Our genetic alphabet was scrambled, family. And you can say we were genetically unplugged. Now, what do you mean by genetically unplugged or our DNA alphabet was scrambled? Okay, a lot of our DNA was actually locked away from us due to us being usurped from living on certain locations on the planet Earth to receive a certain amount of sunlight, as well as certain information was locked away from us due to genetic engineering. So, what do I mean by that? I just made a video about interracial dating, okay? If your mother is not African, that means your bloodline is not African. So if you have a non-African child, and that non-African child then comes back and has a interaction with an African, if the non-African child is a female, once that non-African child gives birth, the blood and the genetic material is void of the information that it will contain if it was a descendant of the mitochondrial Eve gene. So if I'm letter A, and let's say letter A knows everything because it was the first letter here, and letter B knows less, and then letter C knows even less. If letter C comes amongst a group of letter A's, letter C cannot genetically manifest any understanding on a scale of antiquity because it has none. So when we're talking about scrambling DNA and scrambling genetic alphabet, This is done through genetic engineering. Now, genetic engineering was a process that took place on an island called Pelan, and the Bible is called Patmos. And this is you can say the location where Europeans were manifested. Now, when we're dealing with genetic engineering is not just done through whatchamacallit, like laboratory means. It's also done through sexual breeding, just like a dog. Now, we can confirm that dogs come from wolves, but did the wolf evolve into a poodle? Hell no. It was bred out of its original state. Until now, it's not even what it used to be. So, how is it that the wolf is 100% wolf, but then the goddamn poodle is 10% this, 20% that, 30% that? But yeah, we can still trace the poodle to the wolf. This is genetic engineering. This is the same way the wolf became a goddamn poodle is the same way an African man became a goddamn Caucasian, Asian, etc. And the answer is he didn't. It was genetic engineering. So now, why is it important? Bringing this back to the story of Eve being tricked out of the garden by the serpent. When the serpent convinced Eve to bite the apple from the tree of life, remember, the tree of life is your spinal column, okay? Your chakra system. The apple is symbolic to a woman's womb, okay? The fruit. She bears fruit. Your child is your fruit. So that being said, once Eve was genetically manipulated, the mitochondrial Eve gene once again was genetically manipulated. African people were locked out of their own cells on a subconscious scale, because your subconscious is influenced by your genetics, as I broke down in my video Interracial Dating Part 2. So when we talking about the serpent came into the garden and tricked Eve to bite the apple, and then Eve told Adam to bite the apple as well. This is just allegorical to the African woman being usurped in regards to from her divine throne, in regards to the matrilineal system, as well as the manipulation of the Eve gene, and due to her being usurped on a genetic level as well as a political level, being matrilineal, all of her children, aka Adam, because man comes from woman, we understand this. This by default follows for the entire race. Now, when you read the Bible, they tell you everybody, our descendants, is descendants from Adam and Eve. But this is because you're trying to tie everybody to that Eve gene. But then when you go to the story of Jacob, which is Yaqub, because remember, there were no J's back then, there were just Y's. So Jacob, which was really Yaqub, remember, I believe it's Genesis chapter 25. You look up the definition of Genesis. Genesis is the origins and production of something. So everybody's creation story takes place in the book of Genesis. Now, why is this important? Boom. When Jacob is separating Laban's speckled and spotted flocks, and he's killing the black flocks and keeping the white flocks, this is the allegorical story of the reptilian race manifesting the Caucasian race. Now, why is this important? Yaqub is a Hebrew word which literally means supplanter. Okay? Somebody supplanted a race of people on this planet Earth that were not here. If you look at every continent around the world, okay, Africa, China, Asia, America, North America, South America, Central America, wherever you want to go, Jamaica, we can prove that Africans were there first, but now there's a non-African entity living there. We can go to Asia right now and prove that the oldest people in Asia were Africans, but yet you have a pale-skinned race of beings living in Asia. So this is the Yaqub story, the supplanting of the original people in exchange for the GMO people. Okay? So we have literally been, organisms have literally been GMO seeded around this globe. So the story of Eve being tricked out of the garden is the story of African people genetically being tricked out of their own motherfucking land. Now, when we come to the scientific premise, and before I end, let me bring this up. Even when you're dealing with Esau, right? In the Bible, they say the descendants of Esau came out the womb and they were red and hairy. This is talking about the Caucasian, okay? Because when you look up Europeans, once again, they share 98% of their genetic data with chimpanzees, and they are only 93% human being and 7% Neanderthal. And this is why Europeans are so hairy, and this is where the Rh positive blood factor comes in. So the descendants of Esau are the European. When Jacob was separating Laban's flock, this is symbolic to Yaqub, aka a supplanter, manifesting a genetically modified species on the planet Earth. Now, continuing on with the scientific premise of the Adam and Eve story. Adam is an atom, Eve is the mitochondrial Eve gene. So when they say Eve came from Adam's rib, remember Adam, the atom, the subatomic particle, Atoms become molecules, molecules become cells, cells become tissues, tissues become organs, organs become organ systems become organisms. Now, atoms become DNA. So Eve coming from Adam's rib is just symbolic to DNA coming from atoms. When you look at DNA, it looks like a twisted ladder. It also looks like a rib cage. Go on Google right now, type in rib cage, and then type in DNA. They look damn near the goddamn same. So this is why they say Eve came from Adam's rib, because they're talking about the mitochondrial Eve gene, which is the black woman, came from an atom. Okay? Remember, atoms eventually become cells. As I broke down in my lecture, The Black Woman is God. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's on this YouTube page as well. It's called The Black Woman is God. I break down how black women come from pure karyotic cells, which were created interstellarly by the sun. So the Bible is about the sun. Holy means Helios in Greek. Bible means Biblios in Greek. Helios means sun. Bible means book. The whole goddamn book is about genetics and astrology. So with that being said, when it says Eve comes from Adam's rib, it's talking about the mitochondrial Eve gene came from a prokaryotic cell which manifested from the atom particle. And now when you say Adam and Eve was kicked out of the garden, because remember, God kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden after the serpent allegedly tricked them. Now, why is it important? The Garden of Eden now we getting on the Garden of Eden, was Kemet. Because, I'm going to backtrack for a minute. When we talk about the reptilian usurping the African race, if we go back to when the Bible started 6,000 years ago, African people were indeed in Egypt. Now, why is it important? Demotic texts usurped the hieroglyphics. Because Europeans, Caucasians, aka the supplanted people, when they came into Egypt, they couldn't read the hieroglyphics. Now, why is it important? The Demotic text was created by a foreign entity, an extraterrestrial entity. Now, we're going to prove my point. I believe the name of the Egyptian deity, which is the crocodile head, is called Sotek, or Sutek, however you say it. So, with that being said, when you look at Ptolemy, who was an extraterrestrial, Ptolemy not only worshipped the deity Sotek, but when you go into Demotic text, which is allegedly was used to translate the hieroglyphics, but excluding its alleged ability to translate the hieroglyphics, is dealing with the Demotic text in its own, from its own stance. The word for the crocodile deity in Kemet was MSSH, and it was pronounced in a hissing manner, like like a snake. And then when you go into the word Messiah, all right, the word Messiah in Demotic text literally means the lizard king. So when you're dealing with the Illuminati, the head of the Illuminati is Pindar, which also means the lizard king. So when you're dealing with the head of the Illuminati, which is, you know, the leader of the 13 royal bloodline families, what makes these royal bloodlines so royal? Because they're extraterrestrial, and this is a fact. So you have 13 different bloodlines on this planet Earth that are not from this planet Earth that has manipulated the beings of this planet Earth. So when we're talking about kicking Adam and Eve out of the garden, we're talking about kicking the original genetic material of the organisms on this planet, aka African people, from their land in order to usurp them from their resources. And that is what has been happening to us for the last 6,000 motherfucking years and still happening today. We are living in parts of this planet, on parts of this planet, that we don't get enough sunlight to activate certain genetic coding that we had. And for those of us who still live on our original continent, which is Africa, we are being pillaged psychologically and physiologically and biologically in order to keep us distracted from the fact that our land, which is so natural and so sacred, is being raped and molested in order to become something fictitious and add on to the matrix that we're all being forced to live in. So with that being said, coming back to the scientific understanding of the Adam and Eve story. Eve came from Adam's rib because the mitochondrial Eve gene, aka DNA, looks like a rib cage. And Adam is the first form of DNA because DNA comes straight out of the cosmos. This is why African people, we are the children of the Most High, because we literally get our DNA fresh out the cosmos. Everybody else on the planet is descendants of animals due to genetic engineering. So now, getting back into the Garden of Eden. We're dealing with the Garden of Eden family. The Garden of Eden is the word need scrambled up. E-D-E-N. Unscramble that is N-E-E-D. Because when African people lived in Kemet at the time of which Kemet really was, we didn't need for shit. Now, a lot of people think Egypt started 6,000 years ago. Egyptology is a fictitious manifestation predicated upon complete lies, which is the foundation for all religions and everything else to exist, because this was the wicked intelligence being used and masqueraded upon the minds of our people in order to enslave us with 6,000 years worth of psychological incorrect information. So Egypt actually is a 10,000 to 65,000 year old civilization, which I broke down in my lecture, The Medu Neter Has Not Been Deciphered, which is also on my channel. Now, why is this important? Once upon a time, there was the entire Sahara Desert, as we know it, was a river that ran into the ocean. And it was thousands of miles wide. It was called the Ur-Nile River, Urnile. And today it's known as the Nile River. The Nile River is just a descendant in the remnants and what is left over from what it used to be, which was the Ur-Nile River. The Ur-Nile River dried up about 11,000 years ago. And it existed from about 11,000 to 65,000 years ago. Now, why is this important? The Ur-Nile River actually ran from what today will be known as Egypt all the way into the ocean in the Mediterranean Sea. So if you lived in Egypt at that time, it was literally like living on the land and it was like literally living on land. It was like living on a beach. Okay, you lived on land and you was connected to the ocean. You didn't need for shit. And everything, all of that Sahara Desert that you see all across, go on Google right now, type in Sahara Desert map. Look at how much of North Africa the Sahara Desert covered. And you can get a mind's eye view of how all of that used to be plentiful with fruit, vegetation, etc. That was the garden, okay? That was the Garden of Eden. And when you read the Bible, and the Bible tells you God hid the Bible from the Garden of Eden from man, and he turned it to a desert, the goddamn Ur-Nile River dried up, and all of that vegetation today, which used to be nothing more but beautiful sea and land, is now the desert. So the story of Adam and Eve is the symbolic story of the black people being genetically usurped from our own motherfucking lands across this globe by a serpentine entity, aka extraterrestrial. And the story of God hiding the Garden of Eden is just a story of the Ur-Nile River drying up and the entire northern part of the continent of Africa drying up to become today what you know as the Saharan Desert. So, with that being said, family, everything is allegorical, it's symbolic, and this is all hidden understandings written in these books by Masons in order to hide the true understanding and knowledge of African people. This is why when you take that Masonic oath, if you release any of this information, they kill your motherfucking ass. So with that being said, you have to dig deep for the truth, family. And if you read that goddamn Bible and you don't know what you're reading, you're going to be tricked. You have to know what you're looking at, okay? You can motherfucking... If you're not a gang member and you're looking at gang signs, you'll never know what you're reading. Only gang members know the gang signs. Only people that are initiated know the knowledge. And when people, such as the everyday Negro, come across the Bible, they take it on face value instead of understanding what it's actually saying. So with that being said, family, you know I just wanted to break down the true stories and origins of Adam and Eve in regards to what the story was really symbolic to, as well as what the Garden of Eden really is. And I can go deeper and deeper on the Garden of Eden. But I'm going to actually be giving a PowerPoint presentation lecture, about the true spiritual teachings and architectural achievements of Kemet. And I'm going to go way more deeper into that. But I just wanted to incorporate that so that y'all can have something to research and to look into. So basically, long story short, everything you thought was a motherfucking lie. Egypt is not 6,000 years, it's older. Half the goddamn stories is made up. The Medu Neter was never translated. Adam and Eve is symbolic to extraterrestrial interaction and genetic manipulation of African people, as well as DNA manifesting from atoms. And the Garden of Eden is actually the North Continent of Africa, when it was a giant river there that flowed directly into the ocean, which seeded the entire land. Because I'm going to end on this. People are named after the land. The land is not named after the people. So even when you say Kim means black, right? You don't say, because according to niggas who study Egypt today, they talk about that skinny ass Nile River strip and that little bit of goddamn land that was along the river. But how did that little bit of motherfucking land feed millions of motherfucking people? Okay? Millions of people can't eat off that thin ass motherfucking river. You try it. You try it. You see if a whole goddamn tribe of Iroquois was eating off one motherfucking river. No. They're talking about ancient Kemet. That's Egypt. Egypt is the study of what you think is Egypt from 6,000 years. Kemet is anything in that region from 10,000 to 65,000 years. So my point is, when we dealing with... Damn, I damn near lost my point. Oh yeah, so my point is, what we dealing with, family, is when we name black people black, they name them after their land. The Ur-Nile River emitted a black soot sulfury substance, which actually turned the land black and the rich soil black. So this is why people in that region named themselves after the land being black. Not because their skin was black, but they named themselves after the land. People in China don't motherfucking call themselves Chinese because of their skin. They call themselves Chinese because they live on a land that they call China. You live in America, so you call yourself American. If a motherfucker live in Australia, they call themselves Australian. So that you don't name yourself after you name yourself after the land. So people in Kemet name themselves black after the land being black, because even to expose the lie, if people named themselves that 6,000 years, that would be a lie, because everything is goddamn sand. So what the fuck was black? What the fuck is black? You go over there today, it's not shit black. Everything is yellow and red. So why would somebody living on a yellow landmass name themselves black? It doesn't make any sense. So it shows you the lie. When African people name themselves after a black land, that's because it was a massive body of water that was actually emitting certain materials that was interacting with the land, that was creating or manifesting substances known as black soot and other kinds of salts and minerals that was literally turning the land black, as well as the rich soil, because we know when soil is rich and plentiful to plant, it's black. And they named themselves after this land during this state of existence. I mean, during this time of existence, not 6,000 years and down. That's the false manifestations of Egyptology. If you look up Egyptology, Egyptology is created by the Rothschilds. If you trace the Rothschilds, they take you back to the Illuminati, which takes you back to the 13 royal bloodline families, which takes you back to the reptilian entities. So with that being said, family, we got to do extensive motherfucking research. This shit is deeper than you motherfucking think. And y'all know I'm going to always keep exposing it and putting that truth out there. So with that being said, family, without me keeping this video too long, I hope I gave y'all more than enough insight on the true origins and understandings of Adam and Eve in regards to the Garden of Eden. And with that being said, man, do y'all motherfucking thing with this information. Go crazy like I know y'all gonna do. I love y'all. Peace.